print.com. And today we start the news with something really, really, truly groundbreaking. 3D printed Barbie toilets. If this past a few months weren't good enough for Barbie, now people have 3D printed her a toilet. It's a super tiny vibrate toilet and it requires a lot less flushing. This could also be some good news for the rest of us because the work of Yike Lee at Huazhong University of Science and Technology has managed to kind of architect a material that is a slippery material, not only initially, but also after repeated use and repeated abrasive use. So, what they're doing here is something that is a new way of looking at a particular toilet problem, but particularly also maybe some other materials. So, they're basically uniting plastic or polymer and hydrophobic sand grains. And then they're fusing these things with a laser. And then later on, this kind of porous structure is infiltrated with a silicone oil, and that is kind of embedded inside of the structure. What that means is that it kind of can work a lot better than like kind of a PTFE kind of Teflon type of material. These forever chemical materials, these forever chemicals, they permeate our world and they permeate a lot of stuff essentially that surrounds us, and they're not good. So we of course you know could be looking at a way. I don't know if this is the material yet, but this is a kind of way to architect a material that could replace these kind of really nasty chemicals. Um, the idea for the toilet application is to create something that's slippery and that stays slippery so that it can then, in the long run, save a lot of water. You just then need a lot less water to flush. Now, think of the environmental benefit of just every toilet in the world just flushing a lot less, or just all the toilets in vehicles, for example, like trains and planes flushing a lot less. That's a lot less water. And that could be really, really good. And this is an example of maybe additive manufacturing 3D printing being used for in a way that we did not anticipate, first off, and secondarily, perhaps in a way that is much more impactful than just the industry itself. The next news is from the BioMatters team at the University of Michigan. They've developed a fully biodegradable, reusable, and recyclable material for formwork. So they've used sawdust as this, and sawdust is a material that's at a huge industrial scale been made very, very widely available and is kind of left over a lot. So the Muhammad Dayyem Khan, along with Mania, Aghaei, Meibodi, Tharanesh, Varadharajan, and Zachary Keller have all worked together to develop this thing. And essentially, they're working with a robot arm and set on demand concrete. And that is that the concrete stabilizes the formwork. The formwork is stabilized by the concrete, and the concrete in turn is delineated essentially and shaped by the formwork. So it's kind of like a reaction between these two. Afterwards, these things are ground down and then in effect biodegradable, and the material is easier to dispose of as just a lignin kind of material that would leach into groundwater and stuff like that. So that is, I think, wonderful news. I think I love the idea of people working on formwork, and this very well may be a good solution in the future. The next thing is from the Rolls-Royce Droptail. Rolls-Royce Droptail is a kind of coach-built car back to the very, very begin days of the automobile, where you could customize essentially everything. You could go completely crazy. Not just like, hey, I'd like it in this color, but you can go like, change the body shape, do tons of different stuff. The first of the 4 drop tail cars will be developed at, will be kind of used at or showcased at Pebble Beach. This one costs around $24 million. So, so you can customize absolutely everything. It's called La Rose Noire, and it's been commissioned by a family. So they essentially sit down with some designer people at Rolls-Royce, and they commission every part of this. These guys like roses, so it's commissioned. There's details in the car, like for example, you can see there's details in the lacquer work that are their favorite colors, and there's details in that are reminiscent of this rose patterns that they like. And this is a 2-seater convertible. It's a $24 million car that can't sit 4 people. It's a completely custom job. There's an Audemars Piguet watch thing in the middle of it, and you can take that out if you'd like to. And there's these veneer panels that you can see here, all custom made to their designer. So a part of this is the lower intake manifold, the engine. This is apparently 3D printed, and we could imagine that more 3D printing is used on this. We know that a lot of these coach-built type cars, these high customization cars, also supercars, are maybe 3D printing. And this is kind of ridiculous. Remember when we thought that the Veyron was an expensive car? When it cost like $1 million. before we found out that actually the Veil cost $3 million to make, and they were losing money on it. And now Rolls-Royce is selling like essentially $24 million cars due to making them exclusive, making them limited to only 4 people, and giving something that these people can not get in another way, something really unique. But think about this. In this case, we're using 3D printing. We know a lot of these coach-built cars use this, but imagine there's a super premium for everything, right? If they can sell you $80 tequila and a $24 car, $24 million car, even if you threw a couple of years ago, a $3 million car was about the maximum you could get. It used to be the most expensive Ferraris, the historical Ferraris of all time, were only 5 to 10 million, and now you can buy a new car commissioned to many times that. So there's a super premium for everything. That means that you could use 3D printing to make a mega premium headphone, shoe, whatever. And maybe there's just an audience out there. Remember, there's only 4 people that have to buy these cars. So the total world market for these cars, maybe there's 10 of them or 20, or the total audience for this, maybe there's only 100 individuals in the world or 100 families in the world that would commission a car of this value, where there's only several thousand people that could buy it, but only of those, maybe only several hundred would be interested in a Rolls-Royce type of car, or would be able to, maybe these other people would theoretically have the money, but would not want to spend this much money on this particular car, wouldn't like to be this flamboyant, or, they're not interested in this. But, the lesson here to me is that think about other super premium things that you could be making, and maybe 3D printing can enable your super premium product. And maybe it doesn't need to sell millions. Maybe there's only an audience of 4 to 10 people, and maybe you can make that niche thing quite cost effectively with 3D printing. So that's the idea I would like to give to you today. Hey, I hope that you enjoyed this and found this quite useful. My name is Royce Peels, and this thanks to 3dprint.com is another episode of 3D Printing News Unpeeled.